Ladies and gentlemen, it's a genuine pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much for having me. I was very amused by Tom's Ritson quote, so I thought we'd double up on the Ritson quote. I had him on my podcast a couple of years ago, and he made this statement: we're always talking about the pipes, but we don't talk about the shit that goes through the pipes. Well, I'm here to talk about that, ladies and gentlemen. So just to introduce System 1, we are the world leaders in measuring emotion and emotional response to advertising. Now, why is that important? It's important for a very simple reason, that how you feel about what you watch actually predicts a lot more whether you're going to buy it or not than what you say. So if I were to ask you, what do you think of that last ad? You wouldn't necessarily tell me what you actually feel about it, but I asked you how it made you feel. That response is very predictive of what you might go on and do. And we've joined forces with Screenforce here to measure some award-winning advertising. So in this presentation, not only do we have the data, we've got some ads, ladies and gentlemen. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, why is creativity important? Well, to bring our friend Ritson back again, he did a presentation 3 years ago looking at thousands of Effie studies and trying to work out what has the biggest difference on the effectiveness of the campaign. Now, you won't be surprised to hear that the number one factor on how impactful your campaign is how big you are. Big brands have a natural advantage over small brands. However, look at number 2, creativity. You're creative with the single biggest factor in determining the effectiveness of the campaign. Now, if you think about it, you can't do anything about how big your brand is today. That's a result of all the things you did yesterday. So creativity is probably the number one tool at your disposal to influence how big your brand will be tomorrow. Now, there's a little challenge that comes with this. Now, we have to go back 100 years to our friend Jon Evans. Now, I'm sure you've heard this quote before, but I love this quote because it sets up really why System 1 exists today. It's the old quote, "Half my advertising's wasted, I just don't know which half." Well, System 1 are here to tell you which half of your advertising works and which half doesn't. Now, how do we do it? Well, we looked at 25 years of award-winning case studies in advertising. We looked at the emotion created by the campaigns, we adjusted for the amount of media they spent, and we looked at the effects in both the short term and the long term. And we saw those campaigns that delivered the strongest results in the long term were the ones that created the most amount of positive emotion, happiness. And so what we did with that data is we translated it into a simple 5-star scale. It's a bit like TripAdvisor, or if you're going on a holiday and you're looking at hotels and want to know which hotel to stay in, you look at the best ratings, and we divide it into 5-star. 1-star means absolutely no impact whatsoever on the brand's market share. 5-star, on the other hand, had a more than 3% share of the category gained. Now, we've been listening very carefully, haven't we, to Tom's talk, and we know the most important word in the long and the short of it is the "and", so we've invented the spike measure. The spike measure measures the impact of the campaign over the following 6 weeks on sales in the following 6 weeks of the campaign. And we do that slightly differently. It turns out that how strongly you feel about advertising and how easy it is to remember are the two most important things when it comes to seeing those activation spikes that Tom had on his chart. Think about it for a second. Is there any point in advertising if no one remembers who it was? And so this is the third measure, fluency. And fluency is the speed at which people remember who you are. Now, those are the 3 headline measures. Now, remember those because we're going to come back a bit later and talk about them. Now, here's a bit of a dramatic slide. So you know when you get in the Uber and everyone's got a 4.99 rating? Unfortunately, advertising is not quite as good as that. A lot of adverts end up being 1-star. In fact, almost half the ads out of the 100,000 ads we've tested at System 1 only get 1-star. It turns out our friend Wanamaker was about right. Only 1% of ads ever get to 5-star. So when you're seeing the results in a minute, just bear that in mind. Now, I want to quickly tell you how to make great advertising quicker than you can sing cha-cha-cha. I know. This is going to be interesting, right? My friend Orlando Wood has written, I believe, one of the most significant books on advertising. In fact, not just one book, he then wrote 2, right? It's that good. He took hundreds of years of art history, hundreds of years of understanding of neuroscience and how the brain works, and the System 1 database of 100,000 responses. And he combined it to try and explain why some advertising works and some advertising doesn't. Or actually, how advertising works in two different ways, going back to our previous conversation. And what he understood is that the left and right-hand side of the brain don't do different things, as was believed, but respond to things in different ways. The left-hand side of the brain is focused on what's happening now. He calls it narrow beam attention. If you're thinking about something and making a decision, that would be a focused left-hand side of your brain. The right-hand side of the brain is more concerned with what's around, relationships, music, drama, and that sort of thing. It's more aware of its surroundings. Now, this, I think, is the most important chart in all of marketing effectiveness, he says. And you probably can't read it. So the best answer to this chart is to go and buy the book. But anyway, let me try and explain to you very briefly why this is such an important chart. What Orlando did, quite magically, is actually looked back at his 25 years of advertising. He broke down the features of the advertising. Did it have an animal in it? Did it have words on the screen? Did it have a melodic soundtrack? Did it have characters? Did it have humor? He broke it down and he looked at two things: the type of emotion that was created and the amount of minutes of attention that that particular creative achieved. And what he found was that the right brain features, the things that you're seeing in the top and right-hand side of this chart, those things led to greater emotion and greater amounts of attention. It turns out, you see, that the things we feel strongly about are the things we pay attention to. Now, that's really obvious, isn't it? You know, if you were in here watching a film and you stayed till the end, chances are you liked it, right? You might have left early if it wasn't very good, right? So what captures our emotion captures our attention. So those right brain features you're seeing on the top right-hand side, by the way, having an animal in your ad, top tip, best thing you can do. Anyway, not that I'm suggesting you should just do that, but you're going to see an example in a minute. Now, let me just do a little experiment on you. I want you to look at these two ads. Just focus in on them for a moment. And I want you to put your hand up if you're looking at the ad on the left. Or put your hand up if you're looking at the ad on the right. So 95% of the people in this room put their hand up to the right. Now, why is that? That's because the ad on the right is doing all those things you just saw on the top right-hand side, including, by the way, animals. But you'll notice they're not real animals, they're characters pretending to be animals, which makes it funny. There's an audience, you know, they're watching in, you see their facial expressions. There's a scene that unravels, and you're intrigued to find out what happens next. And that there really is the secret of effective communication. It's a bit like putting on a show. Is there a character? Does something happen? Is it set in a place I'm familiar with? On the left-hand side, you had what is often seen in performance advertising. I want to get my message across, so I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to tell you what to think and what to buy, and I'm going to put lots of words on the screen. What happens is we zone out. You know, we stop paying attention, and it doesn't create an emotional response. How do I know this? Well, we partnered with the wonderful people at Lumen to actually measure the actual attention that those two ads create. And we did this across a number of platforms. By the way, TV is even better than this chart will show, because this is YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And we saw that the gorilla ad had 2 to 3 times the minutes of attention compared to the Apple ad in terms of what people actually saw. In addition to that, the numbers at the bottom of the chart show you that the spontaneous recall, when we followed up and said to people, which ad can you remember watching, was much higher when it was the ad on the right using right brain features. So we know that it works. And let me explain that using System 1 very quickly. I'm going to play the ad, have a look at the second-by-second emotion that people feel. Just to tell you, green is good, red is bad, so you see the emotion coming across. And at the bottom, when you see the pink, that shows the percentage of the audience that can identify the brand. So I'll quickly play this, and you'll see what I mean.
I got loyalty, got royalty inside my DNA. I got hustle, though ambition flow inside my DNA. I don't contemplate, I meditate, then off your head. This that put the kids to bed. This that I got.
So the main emotion is contempt. People are actually getting annoyed the more they watch it. Even worse, actually probably good in this case. No one remembers the advertiser. So actually Apple got away with it. So it's probably a good thing. Compare that, however, to the Barclaycard ad I just showed you.
Oh, they're gorgeous.
Do you see how that green builds? That green is happiness in the audience. The dark green is surprise. Surprise is important because surprise is something that keeps us in the story as it unfolds. The middle bar is attention. We're watching the level of attention, how quickly people click through. And at the bottom, this is an ad for a credit card selling fraud prevention. It's pretty serious stuff, and yet they still get their branding across, even though they've got gorillas dressing up. So you can see there some of the secrets to how to make advertising that captures attention and creates emotion. Now, of course, we're in Helsinki, we're in Finland, we're talking about Finnish ads. So what do? We thought we would test 12 award-winning ads here amongst 1,800 people and draw 5 simple conclusions that can help you make advertising that's more effective. These are the winning advertisers that we put through. Let me show you the results. So what we did is we looked at star ratings. So star rating is long-term brand building potential. Spike rating, as I said, is short-term potential. Intensity is how strongly people felt. And fluency is can people remember. Now, some challenging news coming just now. You'll notice award-winning ads performed just the same as the average ad on our database and the average ad in Finland. And I'm going to explain why. It's not all bad news, by the way. What you'll also notice, and this is very typical by way of award-winning ads, you'd see exactly the same thing in Cannes, is that usually award-winning ads make us feel more strongly about the brand and about the creative. It's very much trying to elicit an emotional response. And let me explain why that is. If we take the top 4 performing ads and the bottom performing ads, you'll notice 2 quite different facial, this is, by the way, called face trace, the spread of emotion that people feel. What you see with the lower performing ads is they typically created sadness. That's the blue you see on the left-hand side. Now, that's very common in charity advertising, where actually you're showing the situation that people are facing, and of course it makes us feel sad. The winning ads, or the top ads, and I'll reveal in a minute who they are, generated lots of happiness and also lots of surprise. They were the kinds of emotions that led to the public feeling particularly strongly about them. Now, a quick little tip for you as well, we referenced earlier actually, we also looked at the star rating based on length of ad. Now, we've all grown up with 30 seconds being the hero ad. This actually mirrors the same on the total System 1 database, that 30 seconds is actually the optimum time, well, between 20 and 40, to tell a story, to capture the audience, and to leave them wanting more. Go a bit longer, and you tend to lose them. Go shorter, and you don't get to establish that emotional connection. So the question is, what can we learn from the audience response to these 12 award-winning ads that can help us make better advertising here in Finland? I thought I'd start with the point I was making about charity ads. Just compare the emotion of these 2 ads on the right. On the right-hand side, you'll see the face trace compared to the ad. Look at the amount of sadness and actually fear in the top ad. Now, this is a really important point when thinking about advertising. It's not that negative emotion doesn't matter. It's that if you have negative emotion, you want to resolve it at the end and leave people feeling good. Now, a classic mistake, and this is something that at System 1 we tell everyone to do, is to end on a high. You want a peak ending. But the thing with negative emotions is they last. And so what you have to do is resolve them with plenty of time and end on a high. So if you look at the ad at the bottom, it introduces a little bit of negative emotion, but builds that happiness up to a peak end. So just bear that in mind. Now, I'm going to show you an ad because it's important to actually see the ads. This is one of my favorite from the 12, and it lands a really important point. So let me show you this ad, and we'll talk about it afterwards.
This is a thing I never known before. It's called easy living. This is a place I never seen before, and I've been forgiven. Easy living, and I've been forgiven. Since you take your place in my heart. Somewhere along the lonely road, I had to find you. Day after day on the windy road, I have walked behind you. Easy living, and I've been forgiven. Since you take your place in me,
Mihin ikinä matkasi viekään, kaikki kyllä järjestyy. Pohjola Vakuutus.
Now I can see how many of you are smiling. you see. I get the advantage of seeing all of you fine people. But what that did brilliantly was introduce humour. There were relatable scenes. You saw the interaction between the characters, you know. And actually, having an older woman in an ad is quite unusual as well. So it's great to see, you know, the whole of society being portrayed in this ad. The music, right? The music made you smile. It was right for the setting as well. That's a classic right brain ad. And as you can see there, lots of happiness. Now, one tip, I think, if we were talking to this advertiser would be, have a think about how you can bring your branding in much sooner. Use some of the things that your brand is well known for. But this really touches on a lot of Orlando's book, which is right brain features, so characters talking to each other, facial expressions, all those things that made you smile as you watch the ad and help you connect with the audience. Now, here's an ad actually from the UK that I think lands all those points rather well.
Hi, Gwen, right? Benji, I live just...
Benji, of course, from...
Yes. Hi. Bit of a weird one, but you haven't been getting any of my parcels, have you?
No, love, can't say I have.
It's just I've ordered quite a few things online recently, and with our addresses being so difficult to find, I can see why it might get...
I'll let you know if anything arrives.
So it's amazing, isn't it? Like with modern advertising, how much we cut things up, how many scenes we put in. You've got one scene between a couple of characters, brilliantly told, and the subtle things the camera reveals through the story just make it work so well. As I was saying before, one thing to bear in mind as well is don't forget the branding. Back to the fluency point, and this is an example from one of our award winners where if you look in the bottom right-hand side, that pink is the percentage of the audience that have recognized the brand almost from the beginning. And actually, one of the things that Orlando talks about in his book is fluent devices. He means things that are associated with your brand that people recognize beyond the logo. You don't have to put your logo at the front of an ad, but what are the things that people think about, whether they're colors, their music, their scenes, their characters? Try and introduce those things as early on as you can. Now, another lesson from this as well, and we saw the ad on the left already, but McDonald's was a brilliant example, actually, in the award winners, of a scene that unfolds. You've got characters, you've got loads of characters in the ad that kind of, as something bad happens in the restaurant and how it gets resolved at the end, it's a brilliant example of how you can play with characters and how characters acting can be most important. But what about our award-winning ad? So which ad was it that actually not only won the jury over, but also won the public over? Well, this, ladies and gentlemen, is the best performing ad from the set that we looked at, based on the Finnish audience. I'll show you the ad and then have a look at the emotion it created.
Maestro! Ora abbiamo un concorrente pericoloso! Questa pizza è la migliore che abbiamo mai assaggiato!
Da che luogo viene questa pizza?
Da un luogo chiamato Lago di Budas.
Lago di Budas.
Sì, è da qualche parte del nord.
Allora è vicino al lago di Como.
No!
No.
È molto più a nord.
Finlandia.
Impossibile.
Disastro.
Mamma mia.
Niin. Täältä Pudasjärveltähän ne parhaat pizzat tulevat. Meillä on täällä maailman pohjoisin pizzatehdas.
Congratulations there to Appetit, did a fantastic job. And very importantly, that's bothism. So notice the star rating there, 4-star, very, very high spike. Made you want to go and order a pizza, right? So it did both the brand building and the activation in one go. Also very well branded, actually. It was very obvious, 20 seconds in, exactly what you were watching. So congratulations. So in summary, the 5 things there that I think will really help. So firstly, think about hope rather than hopelessness. People want to feel positive emotions, and we know that positive emotions lead to good long-term effects. Secondly, maybe challenge expectations, and using humour can be a really good way to challenge expectations, as we saw in the spot there. Number 3, think about your audience and how you integrate your audience. Showing relatable characters, everyday scenes can be a very effective way of building a relationship with the audience. Be real and relatable as well. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, how real some of those spots were and how you could find yourself smiling and relating to them so well. And actually, do you know what? You can show pride in your country. I know that us British people tend to be a little bit worried about showing pride, but actually it's good. And there's lots of culture and history that we should celebrate together. So just finally, just to end on, if you'd like to find out more about Orlando and his work on Lookouts and hear him in conversation, there's a little plug here for my podcast. So do check it out at Uncensored CMO. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.